start working week as well?
No, not for work meeting. Just if we're going to do any business. I know Bryce is stuck in traffic, I think.
Yeah, he texted me and said it's going to be late. So.
There's Blake, so we're good.
Good, how are you? Little. Trying to get away with not having to do an ankle replacement, so.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Go to Panama and do stem cells instead. I'm not kidding you. I did it. It's the worst thing I did next to my knee.
You don't like your knee?
Really? Oh, it's so jacked up. Worse than it ever was.
This one's better than this one.
I would never do it again. So we can begin.
How are you?
On the minutes, I did see the only correction was they have me voting for the December minutes, but I didn't vote on that, so that was the only correction I saw in the December, or the April 10th minutes, just that approval, but everything else looked good.
The April 10th from December?
Yeah, the April 10th, voting on the December 12th minutes, yeah.
Okay.
So, seemed like they had all the conditions on the motion for the Smith subdivision in there, so that all looked good to me. Did anybody else see anything that looked?
I didn't see anything.
And then as far as action items for today, we just have the final approval for the Flynn subdivision.
So, Malcolm sent an email saying he's got all the utility, right? So you got the land use fence?
Weston doesn't have one. No, Weston doesn't have one. Rawson has one though.
Well, he still needs to get a letter from his dad saying he doesn't require it.
Yeah, he will. But he might have it on there. Let me look at the drawing real quick.
I mean, the city council took him 3 months to do that fence ordinance, we might as well.
Yeah, I know Rawson chose one on their improvement plan, but I can't remember what happened with Weston.
That was the only question I had. You sent that out and said they were good to go, we had all the utility.
So part of the thing, I know Malcolm referenced it in the email that he sent, but if we're following the ordinance that we just passed, the subdivision ordinance in Chapter 8,
Yeah.
ideally what should happen is when the applicant comes in and they make application, the city staff will decide whether or not it's a complete application.
Right.
And then at that point, that it is complete in their eyes, they'll send it to the TRC and to the members of the planning commission at the same time.
And they didn't do that.
Well, I think everybody's still trying to figure out what they're doing. But then the planning commission, we would look at it individually and see if we feel like it's complete. And if it's not complete, we have the ability to say, no, the staff missed this or whatever. It's important because we have to make sure that it's okay before that review cycle officially starts. And so at that point, then if it went back and they said everything's okay, then they can start their 4 cycles. But somewhere before the 4th cycle, they would come into the planning commission, and that's when we would have a public hearing, which isn't going to happen on these ones. Well, Rawson Ranch probably already had one because they were under the old system where they had a preliminary approval. But for Flynn, they'll end up not having a public hearing. But in the future, that would be when we would want to do that, so that then the public could come in, they could give their feedback in case there's anything we're unaware of, and at that point we could talk to the applicant and let them know of anything else that we might need before it moves into that 4th cycle for review. And then once that's done, then it would come to the planning commission, so we could do final approval like we're doing tonight. And so, when I talked to Malcolm, we talked about maybe doing like a checklist or something, so that every application is treated the same way and we're consistent. And I think that'll cut down on frustration for the applicant as well as for the commission when we're trying to make a decision.
Well,
So so during just one of those cycles, they need to come before us for a public hearing? Is that what
It has to be before the 4th cycle. So I don't know if you have a copy of chapter 8, that's
Yeah.
the one that we just barely did. But if you go to it's under the application, let's see here. Sorry, I thought I had it marked, but I do have it. Okay, so on 10.8.12 under review, so it says, the land use authority, which is us, shall review all subdivision applications under this chapter in accordance with the requirements of this section before approving or denying a subdivision application. The review process begins when an applicant submits a complete application. The land use authority shall not review an incomplete subdivision application except to determine whether the application is complete. City staff will first review the application for completeness. If staff find the application to be complete, they will forward it to the land use authority and the technical review committee. During its own review, the land use authority may reconsider whether the application is complete and may reject an application based on incompleteness, even if city staff found the application to be complete. If the land use authority determines that an application is not complete, it shall notify the applicant of the incompleteness, highlighting any insufficiencies and explaining that the application will not be reviewed until completed. An applicant may appeal a finding of incompleteness by following the appeals process, and the city council is the appeal process, or the appeal authority, excuse me.
And were
So-
both of these already started before that
Okay.
was?
Rawson Ranch was, but Flynn was not.
or
And
share.
so, ideally, what would have happened is when they submitted that complete application, it would have come to us at that time.
Right.
The reason why it's important is now that we're at this point, our only options are to approve or deny.
Right.
And because of the new legislation, it won't go to the city council after this. This one's a good one for it to have happened on because it's only a one-lot subdivision. But if it were a big subdivision and there was something that was
We would just
missed,
have to make a decision.
yeah, and that would be hard for the applicant because they can't reapply again for 12 months if we deny it, if it's pretty much the same as what they've already applied for. So I think it's super important that we have more eyes on it earlier
Yeah,
in the
that makes
process,
sense.
you know?
Okay.
I was just looking, I had a subdivision folder, Blake, at how, I was a little surprised we missed that, because I know we caught it with the other one for Rawson, but when he first came in before I was here, you guys may remember, he might have even came for a preliminary, but it never, maybe he didn't. He was trying to do two parcels on, or two building lots on this one parcel.
Yeah, his dad, or his father-in-law thing.
Yeah, they were gonna do two, there's gonna be a lot two.
Right.
And so I'm thinking he must own this remainder parcel because he was going to divide it. I'm thinking he does. But either way, you're right. Even if he owns it himself,
Thane,
the
I
past-
think Thane owns it, his
he
father-in-law.
does.
Or
Yeah, so
Scott, his
yeah, and
uncle.
that's something we missed. He does need to have a letter for that.
Well, and that's fine. We've done, in the past, we've said we'll approve it, but before you,
Conditionally.
if you get a building permit, you have to show, I mean, Thane just has to write a letter, I don't need a land use or separation or whatever, but,
Well, and technically our ordinance now now says, because they just updated that fencing ordinance, so it now says the city council can waive it. And I don't know if we want to change that, because it's not going to the city council anymore, it's just coming to us. And so, it says that if the landowner owns all of the adjacent parcels, they can do a waiver, but the city council has to approve it.
Which,
so-
this would be that, I guess.
But I don't know if we need to update our ordinance, because I don't know at what point it would go to the city council if we have to have that on our end in order to approve it.
The languages would just say the planning commission could,
Yeah, we would want to update that because otherwise we'd be adding a step that I don't think we could
Yeah,
fulfill every time. We'd be sending them to city council, and I don't think technically they can. The only reason they can go to city council if it's for a non-intended use or a non-approved use, right? And
or
so-
to appeal it later on, but
Yeah.
it makes more sense, I think, to
So
just
we'll
have us do
update
it.
that.
Especially with a situation like that where they own the adjacent parcels, there's
Yeah.
no reason to send them up to the council. I think.
No, we gotta find a way to simplify the single lot and
Yeah.
the two lot and the single lot. It's harder for somebody to grab a piece like he did, or my kids, and build on grandpa's land than it is for a developer to come in and get a 50-lot subdivision approved. I mean, he's done the same thing we did. He's been in it 9 months. You were the same way.
Yeah. So when did that happen? Because when I built my house, I pulled a lot of building permits in a lot of different jurisdictions. Hooper was so easy when I did it 15 years ago. It was a piece of cake. One lot. When did that all change?
That's a good
The
question.
building permit's not hard if you're not doing any property changes though.
You
Pulling a
didn't,
building
you already
permit
had
is
the
super
lot,
easy.
No, I bought the lot.
But you didn't
but it
split
was,
the lot.
you didn't split it.
As soon as you decide to
That's
split the
why.
lot, that's what complicates the process.
I mean, President Perks, he's got a 20-acre lot, and he was putting footings in the ground in 5 weeks.
Because
But
it's
if
one
you-
lot.
That's how it
But
should
if
be.
you take the, like Colton, my kid, he took 20 acres and peeled off an acre, and we were almost a year.
That's,
Same with me.
that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
total
Agree with you
lunacy.
100%.
Amanda, do you know what that fencing ordinance is?
Where
off
it's
the
at?
top of your head? Just so we
It
can make a
is
note of.
10-4A-18. Says the city council may waive the land use separation fence requirements in a minor subdivision when the same entity owns all of the adjacent property with different land uses.
Yeah.
So would a letter, if you got a letter from Thane, because Thane, he doesn't own that, would that
Perfect.
pass?
Yeah, I had to do the same thing. Just my letter was I just drafted it myself and just wrote
I don't
that they were
require-
okay to not have a land use separation fence.
Okay.
Because that my backdoor neighbors are agricultural and I'm not.
And that's what we've always done, but now that we're operating under that new law, what do we do on this one? Because technically our ordinance says they have to get that approved through the city council. We don't want to make them go through another hoop.
I personally would let it fly. He's been up here so many, I mean, we're trying to simplify it. We got Malcolm in here to run interference and try to make sure they have everything they need when they come to apply. And I mean, I would let him go with a letter.
I would just say get the letter, and I think that would.
But I have history there too, so
Is,
whatever we can do to help the kid out, because I know what he's going through.
is Brandon gonna be here tonight?
Sherry, do you know if Brandon's gonna be here?
He's not, or you
Tonight.
don't know?
I don't know if he's gonna be here yet.
I just wanna make sure we do it.
Oh, Thane's gonna bring a letter at 7 o'clock. He just texted me,
Oh,
so he's listening online, so Thane will bring a letter saying he doesn't require his son-in-law to have a fence, which is good. Then we can,
I think if he's here and he's doing that, I don't think there's any
Why
reason
is
not
it?
to.
Why does he have to pay because the law changed while he was doing this and make him go through another step that means absolutely nothing. It's not even,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to go through another step either. I just know, like, we're bound by the ordinances, so I'm just trying to figure out how do we do this without violating an ordinance, so that we make sure, because city council is the only one that right now has the jurisdiction to approve that. So
We
I'm
can't,
not sure unless we ask Brandon and he can tell us.
we can't circumvent an ordinance by majority vote. I don't know, I'm asking.
No, I don't think so.
I don't.
but it's not a current ordinance.
It is a current,
Yeah,
they just barely put
The
that in
city
place.
council just put
And
it
like, they wanna say October, or I can't remember, it was last year when they passed it, they just barely updated that ordinance.
But it's not legal, right? It's not how it's being done, right?
what do you mean?
Nobody else is gonna have to do that, correct?
No, it will.
Everybody will.
Everybody will.
They just didn't catch it up front on this one, cause if we
No,
had
no,
known.
go before city council.
Oh, she meant if we wanna circumvent the ordinance, then only the city council has that authority.
We need to, since we just updated that subdivision ordinance, Hooper City needs to update our ordinance and say planning commission has the authority
Yeah.
to, where this is brand new, I think there's gonna be a lot of these little side areas that we didn't realize when we
There's
updated it.
in our Title 10, there was a clause, right, that said, wherever this conflicts with existing ordinance, this shall prevail.
This will supersede.
This is unless the prior ordinance was intended to alter this, right? So,
Do you think that's,
it's up to you guys.
this is not an issue, like, I don't see this being an issue that's gonna come back and bite us, but I just.
Yeah, I don't
Don't know
think
if
it'll
we
be, I don't think it'll
have the
be an
authority
issue
to-
either, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
I mean,
So
if
I
you
don't-
were,
that
if we
would
were
be
dealing,
maybe a discussion though.
if we were
if you think
dealing with
that-
a boundary line agreement.
Because we're gonna run into this a little
easement,
bit where Title 10 will be some ordinance will be outdated compared to Title 10. So I don't know if you wanted to pull that piece that talks about where Title 10 will supersede it. And I don't know if you can make that implication at that point, right? It's like, well, obviously it's implied now that single family dwellings have to be approved, by planning commission, so there's no way that old ordinance can even work.
I'm comfortable with that, at least for now, but could we put on our next agenda to make a recommendation to the city council to update that ordinance so that we have the authority to approve that?
Sure.
You guys
Yeah, we
okay with
can.
that?
It's weird too, because the way that this reads, it says that they can only have the exemption if they own the other properties, but it doesn't say anything about if they don't own the other properties.
Yeah,
It was different before,
We
but
haven't been
that's
applying
changed.
it. We haven't been applying it that way, at least in the past. We've
Right,
been
in the past, it
letting
was
them,
the
we've
way-
let them get them from neighbors,
Yeah.
family, friends, and get the waiver
Yeah,
still.
it
But
used
they
to be
changed it
they did.
intentionally. So
I don't know if it was intentionally, but
It's
that's
just the way it got put.
how it reads now, so.
Yeah. Well, we'd want to address
That
that,
one
as well.
paragraph
If what
should be
their
added.
intention is, do we want them to be able to get it from them, from neighbors, or
Yeah.
because otherwise it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense because you're always going to be willing to exempt yourself, right?
Right.
So it's kind of implied, and so unless you allow them to get it from neighbors, it's really not even a benefit necessarily.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, so I think we should address both of those when we talk about it on the next meeting.
Yeah, we can work on that for sure.
Other than that, I didn't see anything else
On the agenda.
on the Flynn, on that subdivision.
He had all his
All his
letters from the 600 feet radius or whatever. I mean,
We didn't do a public,
We didn't do a public hearing, we missed.
yeah, so they never sent them out. I talked to Morgan about it, but she's like, yeah, we would only send them out if we had a public hearing, so we didn't. And that was a miss for sure on our end. We talked about that, but kind of a Title 10 deal. You don't have to have a public hearing.
No,
it's gonna be his uncle, and that ain't gonna,
that, I
pretty
think,
much Scott and Tracy.
Yeah, you don't have to have a public hearing, but yeah, where it's up to you guys. You can always have one if you want one, but we didn't coordinate it, right? So
And
we never
we're in
asked
a
you.
learning curve, cause now we're the,
Yeah, we never asked if you guys wanted one, and you guys never requested one, so it just never.
I personally think we should if it's a land use issue, we should always have a public hearing, because sometimes things will be brought to our attention that we wouldn't have known otherwise, and I think it gives us a chance to look at the whole picture, and we don't have to, but I think that we should when it comes to something like
You could
this.
do that public hearing, I'm assuming Morgan would know, but in the same meeting, right? Like you could have public hear it and make a decision right after.
Well, no, you can't, not anymore with the new process, because you've got those 4 review cycles. So it has to happen sometime before the 4th review cycle. And so they would have to have the public hearing, then have a chance to remedy anything that may have come out of that public hearing that we may require. Then they do the 4th review cycle with you guys, and then it comes to the planning commission for a final decision after that. But it says in the law, we have to have that public hearing prior to that 4th review cycle. So
So we would need to insert them prior to this same the meeting where you're going for approval.
Yeah.
So we'll send, like you say, we'll have to create a little list, but we'll send out, updates on where we're at, what review number. And then we'd have to do it somewhere around, 2 or 3, at least so the spirit of that could be followed so they could get the info and update it. So we'd have to do it at planning commission before, so.
it's gonna be kind of a juggle
A little bit.
with those days that we are bound by.
Yeah.
But I think ideally, if they came in, made application, you guys determined it was complete, sent it to the TRC, sent it to the planning commission, we say it's okay, and then you do the first couple of review cycles or whatever, and we just put them on whatever meeting we have closest to that, as long as it's within those 15 or 20 days.
Sure.
Then they can come in, we can give them more information if there's anything that comes out of that public hearing, or maybe we have questions we want to ask them. Then they have a chance to remedy it, and then they can be on our next commission meeting for final approval, if they take care of those things. I think they have 40 days before we get an additional 20 or something like
You
that.
guys, you want to it's not everyone here, it's not, we don't have to solidify it, but do we want to public hear all of them? It seems like that's what's been done generally, and they do, things do get brought up, it seems like.
Is that something we can decide in this meeting, or would we have to put it on the agenda and decide it by vote? I don't know.
I like the
I don't
idea of a public hearing just so we don't miss anything.
Yeah,
I
And
do
then
too.
let it rip.
gotcha.
Plus, it takes out the judgment calls. Like, there's never someone that's trying to separate their land that can come back and say, "You guys made me do it, but you didn't make that guy do it. Why?"
Yeah.
It's just a hard and fast rule. Protects you guys.
I think it helps. I think it helps the developer too, because if something were to come up later down the line, I think it's always better to know a little bit sooner so that they have more time to address it.
Okay.
Well, we'll have 2 more that are
Come on.
trying to get to the next one.
So are they coming in for a final on the next one?
It will be.
So how are we gonna do that? How big are they?
One's a large one over by the burnt church, and I have to look at the lot number, but it's 20 odd homes, and then
This the
Yeah,
one
they're just
north of the
single lot.
burnt down church?
At what point in the review cycle are we on it?
4th and final, they're done.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I remember that coming through a year or so ago.
Hmm. Yeah, so we could public hear them at that meeting if you want. It doesn't go intent to
We can't
review
do
it.
it. We can't do it by the law because it has to be before that 4th cycle.
Yeah,
Well, how many days do we have to publicly notice?
10 calendar days.
you get even 10-day public notice.
I guess.
Do we have time to? Well, we can't. We're already in the 4th review cycle.
Yeah, you've had a 4th, and you've approved, and we've reviewed it from a 4th, I think, on both of them. Yeah.
See, and that's concerning because we've never seen it, and we're the ones that have to approve it.
Well, but this one would be a preliminary because it's more than 2 lots, right?
We don't have the preliminary.
Yeah, it's all done in one.
It's all final now.
Even the large lots of large.
Yeah.
It all goes through that.
That's why that process that we put
Yeah,
in that chapter 8,
anything
we
single-
have to follow that,
I
or
thought,
we won't see it.
I thought the large ones still went through a preliminary and then a final.
They changed everything, and all we had in our packet was just a little memo from JUB that said we recommend, we've reviewed this and we recommend final approval, but that doesn't give the planning commission eyes on anything that's going on, and it doesn't go to city council anymore, so we're gonna have to make sure we follow that process.
Well, we just got an open door. Let's get it done.
Well, what
Smell
are
it, smell it.
we trying to alleviate by having come to another public comment meeting, or have another meeting? What are we trying to alleviate?
if there's,
Information we can't see.
yeah, we haven't seen it, so we're taking it on good faith that the
Well, we
staff
should-
has not missed anything.
But we should have it after that planning commission, like it should be sent from, once staff has that complete app, we should have everything then, and we should be able to have our eyes on it and be able to
Yeah, I agree.
bring any, like, I don't know, yeah. I agree the public hearing does provide
I
protection.
read the public hearing part differently. I think that, so it says, if the land use authority elects to hold this public hearing, that's you guys, not the TLC. Well, yeah, you're the land use authority. The hearing must occur before the end of the LUA's review period in the fourth or final review cycle. So I don't think it has to occur before the end of the fourth or final review cycle. It has to occur in your guys' 20-day review.
Where
So
are
after,
you at? Oh,
G, let's see, the Title 10,
10-8, is it 12?
10, 8, 12G, the very last paragraph in there. Or, yeah, the second to last, sorry. So after we've done after the TLC, and it's a little hard because some of this is interchangeable, right? Like when I say TLC, that actually includes one of you guys technically, but it just says that the land use authority likes to hold this public hearing. The hearing must occur before the end of the LUA's review period in the fourth or final review cycle. So in the fourth and final review cycle, after we approve it, then there's a planning commission or LUA approves revised application. Say it has 20 business days to approve or deny the application after the fourth review cycle. I don't know how you read it or if you read it similar.
So if you look on the chart,
Mm.
so I guess what I'm asking on these other two that we have coming up, have you guys already completed your fourth review cycle, or we're in the middle of it?
Well,
Because if it's just between the third and the fourth, we're fine.
no, we've completed a fourth on both of them.
So that's,
Yeah.
I don't think we can do it at this point then.
Well, I think that at that point you guys have,
Read that again.
if the applicant takes more than 40 business days, city gets 20 more business days tonight. You guys have, so after the fourth review cycle, how long do you guys have 20 days to make your decision, right? After the,
Yeah.
which technically, obviously, we're not going to meet this time, right? I mean,
No.
we already reviewed it. You're not going to see it within 20 days. But in G, it says, I'll read it again. If the land use authority elects to hold this public hearing, the hearing must occur before the end of the land use authority's review period. Well, you guys don't have a review period. The only review period you don't have a fourth review period. You guys have a 20-day review period after the TLC's fourth, right?
Well, so that goes to the other thing, like as far as, remember when we were working on those policies and procedures? Because the law says that the land use authority has to designate who does what in this, like what the technical review committee does. We haven't done that yet because those policies and procedures haven't been passed. So we're kind of just doing it, we're not following
It's a little ad hoc.
technically.
for
Yeah,
sure.
and so
SS or 5.
my understanding is that if we
The
designate the
TLC has to do
TRC,
the
yeah,
TRC, sorry, TLC 10 or 11.
they have four.
Technical review committee.
They have 4 review cycles. If we designate the TRC to do that, they
Yeah,
have
they
4
do.
review cycles.
Yeah, and it's kind of been implied that the TRC's doing. That's why we created
Yeah,
it. They're doing the
sure.
review cycle. Sure, we can specify it though. But yeah, they do the review cycles, and then according to this ordinance, the land use authority has their own 20-day review cycle after the fourth review cycle to approve or deny. I think your public hearing, because especially if you read the last sentence there, it says scheduling issues shall not extend the review and approval deadlines in this chapter. I think the whole spirit of that is saying that you guys have your 20 days to approve or deny after fourth. You have to do it in those 20 days of public hearing. That's how I read it, because they're not going to let you do say, well, we didn't get a public hearing, and so we got to go past the 20 days. They don't want you to extend it, their approval or denial.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you fit it into your 20, that's how I read it. But I could read it wrong, and you can read them both ways. So I don't know.
I think maybe if we reach out maybe to the
Yeah.
Hanson group, or
Sure.
because when we were going through all those meetings, I felt like they drilled that we couldn't do it. It had to be before that. But let's make sure, because I don't want to do anything wrong on that.
Sure. Yeah, we can talk to the Hanson group and ask.
Because I think we see it up front, ideally, when the TRC gets it, we would each get a copy of it and be able to look at it and see at that point if we felt like it wasn't complete. And then the public hearing would be our opportunity to listen to the public if there's anything we're unaware of, that maybe there's a problem we didn't see. And at that point, if it's before the fourth review cycle, we can tell the applicant, hey, there's an issue here that we didn't know about, this ditch or whatever. that gives them a chance to remedy it before our final review cycle and sending it to the planning commission. If we do it after that, that doesn't give them a lot of time to fix any potential problems.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, but I can see how you read it that way for sure. So yeah, either way, probably, even just from a practical standpoint, if you guys want to have a public hearing, again, it's up to you guys if you want to have them every time. You don't, it's totally up to you, but we probably should have it prior to the 4th, so that there can be revision. Otherwise, there's no revision. So that makes sense.
So maybe on these two, maybe we can at least reach out to the Hanson group or whoever and find out and make sure. Maybe Brandon can tell us whether or not we're still okay to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then going forward, we'll just do it the way that we're
Yeah,
supposed
we
to
can
whenever
put them
it comes
in.
out of that.
We can put them in either the 2nd or the 3rd. It probably makes sense to try honestly get them in the 2nd, but either way, earlier probably, so that they have time to make changes. But yeah, we can put one in. You guys will just need to solidify if you want them every time. We can, but anyway, talk about that. We vote on it or something next time.
We should, well, then if we do
That
that, are we gonna
extends
be in
their,
trouble?
yeah,
If there's more applications that come in?
I don't know, I still don't understand why we would want that for everybody. I can see maybe somebody, but I don't understand for what. What are we trying, I don't understand what we're trying to alleviate.
I think, just my view on it, if I agree, if we're gonna do it for one, we probably should do it also, we're consistent. But the point of a public hearing, like if you had a huge subdivision going in next to you, and let's say maybe you had a ditch or something that it was going to interfere with, that's your opportunity as someone who's directly affected by that subdivision to come in and say, hey, just so you're aware, I have a problem here that this is gonna cause. And so this needs to be addressed. And that gives you an opportunity as somebody who is affected by it to come in and make sure that the city's aware of that and they put conditions in place so that it's not gonna hurt your property. Because that's why they send a notice to everybody within like 600 feet of where the subdivision is going in. I think it's just to protect everybody that could be impacted by it.
You could do them for majors and not minors. Probably could hold a similar logic, but you miss the feedback. So, whatever you guys want.
How many times, you've been here the longest, or have you, like,
Amanda.
how many times has that come up where somebody has pointed something out? If we get to a point where there's going to be an impact on my property and it hasn't been caught before now, somebody's not doing their job, are they?
Well, that's our job now, really, because
Well, then we must not be doing our job. We're depending on the adjacent property owner to point it out. I don't understand why we. Here's my point, I guess. If I'm building a house, let's say $500,000, I went and got the loan, whatever. We're going to delay this another 30 days. I'm paying interest on this money. 30 days for what? I don't.
well, we're not delaying. We are bound by the legislation that was just passed. We have a timeline on every single one, and it's the same timeline unless the developer slows it up on their end. So we're not delaying anything. We're still adhering to the same timeline for every single person that comes in.
So we're going to max out the timeline instead of making it quicker?
I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal
It's
is to
not?
make sure
It's my goal.
What,
to max it out.
To max it out or not?
Or
It's
minimize
to
it.
minimize the time that that a resident of this community comes in and has to jump through all these hoops
Yeah.
to do what they want with their own property. Instead of making it more difficult, I say we make it easier. Why do we want to make it
You
more
guys will
difficult?
probably have to vote on it if you want to make it like official, or you know what I mean.
Well, and I
If
can
you-
see
you
both
guys can just
sides. I mean,
decide.
You complain about your sons, the problem you had with your sons, you went through it yourself. Who has got a
well,
permit?
and
It's
part
crazy.
of that was we'd come in and they'd say you got to have these 4 things done. He'd go and do them 4 things, bring it back, and they'd say, "Oh, you missed this,
That's
and
my
you missed
point.
that." And he says, "Okay, I'll have it up here this afternoon." And the city recorder at the time says, "You don't have enough time between now and the next planning commission, so you have to wait."
Only other consideration you guys want to take into place with it is no applicant I think is going to be super hard on us, to be frank. And I'm not saying I want to operate in the gray, but sometimes it's just the reality. Like these are really stringent deadlines, the timings. They don't keep track of them. We kind of are best we can. But if you do that and you did have a really consistent applicant, there's a good chance that you might not be able to fit them all with the 15, the 20, or you do public hearing. But yeah, you know what I mean? You might have a emergency meeting for public hearings from time to time, which is fine. Just be aware of that. It's likely, and I would have to kind of crunch the numbers, but it's likely with these 15, 20 day turnarounds, and you know what I mean? And you're going to hurry squeeze in a public hearing prior to a third or fourth. It's probably unlikely that we could fit it on your once a month meeting prior, you know what I mean? You probably have to throw a meeting in to get it done.
Why wouldn't we just have the public hearing? Somebody walks in and says, hey, I want to build a house. I got this lot. Right then, as Morgan fills out the application, we do the public hearing and say, hey, this is coming down the pipe. And then when it goes through the TRC and the land use, as they get those items done and send them to us so we can review them, we'll say, hey, this was talked about in the public hearing, it's not on here.
Yeah, that could be easy.
I
know what
think
I
that
mean?
might be a good
It
idea.
can
Move
make
it up
it,
sooner in the
not,
process.
it can make it not lengthen the process. For
Just
sure.
say, here's my, just like Smith's did, here's my idea, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
And then we say, oh, you know what, maybe we need a public, it's gonna affect
Yeah, that's
7 different landowners, or 4
They
different
might
landowners.
not have all the details to complain specifically or
Right.
to bring up exactly what they need, but generally it should, you know, they're building something on this parcel, they should be able to
But I go
express
back to,
what they have.
I go back to Brent Thurgood, that we approved that subdivision next to his house. He come in here last month, matter and wet hen, because the drainage is draining onto his front property, and nobody caught that per se. You know what I mean? So he has a legitimate gripe, and it's like, well, bad on us. We should have figured out how we were gonna drain that, even if it's irrigation or if it's storm drain. I was listening online, so I didn't get all of it.
Yeah, we could have public hearings after a completed
I
application for
think that
sure.
would be good. If once you guys say this is complete, send it to the TRC, send it to the planning commission, and at that
And then
point,
as part of you guys is, yeah, we do
Schedule-
it's complete
put it on
too, say
a
schedule
public
public hearing.
yep, I think that's a good idea.
I think that alleviates what the single lot subdivisions come in facing a whole nother meeting extension on. I think that's
Oh,
great. I think that's a good idea as well.
So what
And then I
about-
guess we can just check with the Hanson Group and Brandon to see on those ones coming down the pipe.
Sure.
What's the best course of action to take on those?
So we're good with everybody good with the Rawson one? I didn't see, I mean, according to your letter, everything looked good. I mean,
Yeah, they did
This
all,
isn't
they
like
did all
it's their-
4 reviews.
it's not like it's their first phase either, so they know the game.
4th and final.
There were some, I know there were some issues with one of the neighbors that they had signed an agreement or something that was gonna be taken care of. Do you know if everything's okay with that?
That's that deal.
To the best of my knowledge, yeah, it's I can't remember that gentleman's name, but
Robinson.
yeah, great. Yeah, he had some worries about, but that had to do with RFR.
Okay, not this one.
But they're all interrelated because RFR eventually will drain to a containment or will drain to phase 2, and so it was with the grading with them to make sure. But yeah, Jared went out and inspected it again. They brought in some more fill-in on some of the lots and then removed some on the first lot, and he approved the first lot. So yeah, to our knowledge, he hasn't brought up any
Okay.
issues with it since then.
Okay,
so-
that's good.
That's where we're at.
Okay. What else, boss?
And then I think just like Amanda mentioned, on our next agenda, I think we should have kind of that procedure
The
on there.
bylaws?
The
Policies and
bylaws,
procedures.
policies and bylaws, I guess we can briefly discuss those. I saw that
We
email.
We got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, as far as on this checklist that Malcolm sent out,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
would it be okay too if we,
Do you want to discuss that?
well, I don't know that we've had enough time to really go
And
over it,
finalize
but
it.
on our next agenda,
Yeah.
if we could, like, if you guys have a chance to look at it and we can add anything that we want to, that we feel like it needs to make it ours, because I think he might have got this from Plain City.
Yeah,
But-
one of them was from.
I noticed some of the things that are on our application right now don't it doesn't have everything that we have in chapter 8 as the requirements in our ordinance for these subdivision applications. Like, one of them was the whole thing with the fencing. I didn't know if we wanted to address that on there. Also, I didn't mention the final approval letters. There's a few things, and I don't want to take up the time since we're gonna look at policies and procedures, but maybe if we could go over that next time so that we get that in place.
Well, yeah, if we,
I think it'd be clear if we just ironed out like, okay, staff is looking for this. I know we need to look for everything, but if we knew what's being checked off by them in those review cycles, then that kind of alleviates, we can do our double checking, but that kind of alleviates.
you know,
I think
Sheldon?
it helps if we do have like a checklist so that every subdivision is held to the same standard and we're not showing special
yeah, because
treatment
100%.
to other people.
if you come in to do and I don't know if Thane Son-in-Law got it or not, but when we did our two, we come and got a single lot subdivision packet from 2003. And there, so if we can improve it with a checklist,
I think it.
So I think, yeah, let's
frustration.
put that on everybody's, kind of go over that, the cycle process and then the checklist and see if there's anything missing on that. And let's have a good
Okay.
discussion on that next time.
And I think
well.
where this is administrative and not legislative, we're okay to discuss it, because it has to do with just how we're administering things. So even if we talk amongst each other on email, I think we're okay to do that on this so that we can come prepared to put it in place next time, just so we don't have more of these subdivisions coming in and have
That makes
problems on
sense.
them.
And I agree with your point, it's not a legislative thing, so that communication back and forth is fine. I know that's a,
Yeah,
Gray
some
area.
things we have to be really
Yeah.
careful on
So-
with that, but
so I agree, so.
so which one do you want to go over? Just brief.
I would just go, Amanda sent hers, it's obviously a lot more detailed than the old Hooper
Bigger
City
than the
one.
ordinance.
well, it's the one that we looked at in December, but there were a few things that
Yeah,
updated suggestions, like we changed, we now have 7 members on the commission instead of
so
5.
the only question is like, do we need to call those things out where they're called out in the actual ordinance as well? Like, do we need to repeat them in there?
I don't
Right.
think it will hurt to have it be as concise as possible, just so there's no room for questioning. And that would be, I don't think it's gonna hurt anything, as long as, I think there's a part in here where it says if any of this conflicts with, if, we can't do it if it conflicts with our ordinance. So,
Yeah, and then my only other, I guess, I felt like some things could be added to the ordinance rather than just called out in our bylaws to make them more uniform. Whether we adopt different bylaws in the future, just make them kind of, that was my only other things. I thought we could direct some of those to be written in the code.
do you, which ones did you think, because we'd have to recommend it to city council.
Yeah, I just thought like the one, what was discussed last week with Brandon, the voting, I think it's unclear, and as the public comes, like if we only had a 4-member council and we had to have a unanimous vote to pass that ordinance, whereas if you're coming as a person in the public and you see it got 3 out of 4, you would have said, well, that's 75%,
Yeah.
but you had to have 4 out of 4 because it's a 7-member council. So just some of those things I think would help clarify from a public perspective
Yeah.
So
in
that
the
if it-
ordinance. So
Yeah,
just so we can reference that, they're like, well, why didn't that, well, the ordinance states that,
You got 4 here, how come you gonna do
Well,
a majority?
I don't, to my knowledge, I don't know of anything that we would need a unanimous vote from the commission. I know the council does sometimes certain things that they do.
I'm not saying, but that, it had to be, all 4 of us had to vote because it was the 7-member.
Oh,
You still need 4 passes.
You
I
still need,
understand what you're saying.
but we only had
So
4
just-
as a quorum, and so they're seeing 3 out of 4
I
as a
understand what
public.
you're saying now.
So I just think some of those
To
things,
clarify.
and the voting was one, and, yeah.
I
So-
think another option to that too might be if we put these policies and procedures on our website, so that if anybody does have questions about how the planning commission operates, they could find that, because I know that clarifies that several times in here. But I agree, maybe if they're just going off of the ordinances, it might not be as clear and they could be confused.
So on your update, well, you have no more than 3 commission members should gather on any assignment. If 4 is a quorum, do we have to hold that to 3, or can we have 4?
Or we can't have 4 because
Yeah,
4
4
would
makes
Four
it
would be
possible.
a
that would
quorum,
violate the
so,
open public meetings
yeah.
law.
Oh, okay.
One other question, I did have one on the, you said no more than three can attend on Zoom. Do we want to, I guess, what is the reason of, restricting? Obviously, we don't, I think being here in person is better than being on
Yeah.
Zoom, but
I think, I pulled that from another city, and it used to say no more than 2 or something, but since we increased the commission, I don't really feel strongly about that. I know whoever's running the meeting has to be at the satellite location or whatever it's called, the main location. But, I'm not married to any of that, I just
felt like that was if we have people come and they want to attend the meeting, I don't think we should handicap ourselves. That was the only.
well, and during COVID, that's all we could do. We were all on, it was all
But before
electronic, so,
COVID, you couldn't do it at all.
yeah, we
Yeah,
couldn't.
and I don't like it at all. I wish we
It's
could.
really hard
It's
to
hard
hear.
to follow.
I agree,
Yeah.
but I think there are circumstances, sometimes that are beyond our control where we have to have that available, but I think best practice.
Maybe on a case by case, the chair decides.
And is it,
You can look at the agenda and say, you know what, we got 2 pole barns and something else, it's not a big deal for them to be on Zoom.
are we doing that of necessity or are we doing that of convenience? And I think for convenience, I think we should all do is the absolute best we can to be here.
Yeah, I think this. Yeah,
I agree with
it's hard
that.
to judge off of.
I get it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and we have technology, which is great. I mean, I think it's great if we can utilize it, but I don't think we should abuse it,
So I tried listening to the last city council meeting and I can't remember, somebody attended, and I couldn't hear it at all. I was remote. I couldn't hear anything. So is it?
That is definitely a drawback of doing
Yes.
Zoom.
So is it?
Can you
I
guys,
don't
can you guys
like
not hear
participating
the?
on
So my
Zoom.
question, I guess, is the technology
They're just
from
not
the
good. Like
city
this one's
that's
good.
not doing
This
it,
one,
or
because they're-
what?
The microphone's
It's
right
the
here.
city because you have to speak into that mic, but then you're gonna get listened to here, and then when they post the meeting, it comes off of that recorder.
Really hard. I know.
it's difficult to hear.
It's tough.
Plus, if someone's talking and they're not right at the mic, and
Yeah.
That makes it very difficult.
We could put in there, try our best to be there in person, but I still think it's good to have that available as something that is there if we need it, because there are times when we need it.
Yeah.
So, and especially like if we had a situation where if we were short and one person not being able to attend meant we didn't have a quorum, we
Yeah.
don't want to put all of those people off that are on the agenda. So,
Pros and cons for sure.
yeah.
So, the other thing I had is, if I sit up there and I have a conflict of interest, before, like when Colton come through, I was like, hey, I got a conflict, this is my kid, so I'm not gonna say a word. But now you're saying you want to leave the DS?
I don't care again on that. That's what several cities that I looked at, they suggested that, so you're not tempted to be a part of that conversation when that decision's being made. You don't have to leave the room, but you come down into the audience so that there's not pressure. I don't care. I just put that
I like
in
it.
there
My
'cause-
dad is on the planning commission in his city, and the chair was a developer, and he would sit up there and basically browbeat everybody into voting for his stuff. But I'm not voting on this one,
Yeah,
so yeah, sit back down,
I get
you're a
it.
member of the audience in that
yeah.
position.
I think it protects us. Not necessarily not sitting up there, but just making sure there's a clear line there that we didn't wrongly influence
It looks
a
a lot better
decision
for
on some.
the citizens and stuff too.
I agree.
He's a big guy. He's doing all the hours.
Was there anything else in there that you
He's over there
guys?
on 4,500 off 18, where RJ excavating is. That's his town. No, I was. Wasn't there something in here about how many agenda items?
She calls out,
Yes.
it calls out who's added, could add, and it just says 2 members can add.
Well, but there was like a maximum of 10.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do we really want 10? We'll be here forever.
It used to say 15 and the other things. So city council has 10. I don't know if we want to limit it and say 10 items total or 10 action items or.
If we pursue Malcolm's suggestion with all pole barns and increase that square foot size, our agenda items will drop.
Yeah, and I think we'll only end up seeing these subdivisions and
So we need to
larger.
bring that up again and vote on it and say, hey, you know what?
Come sit by me.
We're gonna recommend to the city council, anything over 2,500, we're not even gonna look at.
Should we put that, so,
I think that needs to be on an agenda. We need,
I think he was still working on that, where he was doing that, pole barns and the AUD
just,
for,
if it's increase the size so that we don't see every single, if it's 2,500 feet or less, we don't even see it.
yeah.
But is that for, because right now there's different sizes for half acre versus third acre versus.
Yeah, and he had it down at 60% of,
Yeah, we were just going off the impervious surface kind of restricts that pole barn size based off your lot size and things like that. And I think 25% was the number,
you still working on that,
What?
Mr. City Planner?
The accessory structure.
Accessory structure increase?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would like to see that on the,
Next
on
one.
our, well, no, as quick as we can, because I think that would allow us to, our agenda items to go cut in half. Because we were just talking about how many agenda items is too many for one meeting, because we don't want to be here till 10:30 at night.
Maybe we could have that on our next
True.
meeting too to vote on. One thing too, as far as the maximum number of agenda items on our, in this policies and procedures, this document, we can change any of it without having to go to the city council, as long as it's not something that they have to.
vote on.
And so if we get into it and we're like, well, 10 is too many, then we could always adjust it. So I don't think, we'll just kind of see how it goes, and then if we need to make adjustments, we always can. Since you're here, Brandon, can we ask you a question on this, as far as on that new chapter 8, the way that the process works?
Subdivision.
Yeah. With the public hearing, I'm just curious, if we have to have that before the 4th review cycle ends, or is it after? And where did I put that thing? Because I had it printed out. Do you have the?
Cycle
Yeah,
diagram?
the cycle. I have it. I just don't know where I set it since we started
one of these?
talking. It is in one of these, but
Right
I
here.
think it's probably.
all right here.
I think you're probably right. I think it might be before, but.
I have to.
Right there.
I would much rather have it earlier because then
I agree.
anything brought up by people in the audience can
Yeah,
be
because if we
addressed.
bring it up early, they might not have to go through 4 cycles,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
If we
I was
wait
gonna
till
say,
the
I mean,
end and-
I can look into it, but I think the code just anticipates you'll do a public hearing, right? You will have one public hearing on a subdivision under that, but I agree with you. I mean, you would probably want to wait until pretty much got what they are going to put together, right?
The hearing must occur before the end of the Land Use Authority's review period in the 4th or final review cycle. So we didn't know if that meant
We can't have it after the
we can't
first
have
one.
it after the
Or
4th.
the end of the review period, and before the end of the review period in the 4th or 5th. You're right, it is a little bit open to interpretation, but I mean, this is.
I think they're referencing his 4th
Yeah.
review, but I kind of was saying there's a final, kind of technically, but I think they're
I
calling
think
this
they
the
need that,
final.
yeah. Well, and so we have
Yeah.
one that's gonna come, it's already past the 4th review cycle and we haven't had a public hearing on it. I know we don't have to.
Yeah, do you think we
It's
should
a
have
bigger
one
subdivision,
just to have
so-
it, and then if we have issues, we can kind of extend this just a touch, or if we don't have, we can just not have one. But we're just wondering what you think. Because if we have one and there's some feedback, they'll get delayed a little. I don't think it'll be a big deal, but I mean, they technically could get a little. They could reference this and say we pushed them too far.
We
But
would just have to have another.
that's assuming there's issues that need to be reviewed. If we
Or
don't
something
have
we
one,
couldn't
then
just tell them like, get
if
this.
we don't have
figured out
one, then
in
we're
time.
set. But I get it's not best practice, and yeah, that's staff mishap. We'll make sure we get them in there.
Yeah, I think typically though, I agree, you would do it in this, 4th review cycle or whatever. It might not even make it to the 4th, right? If they come in, I think that's why it means more final, right? Because if they're in on the 2nd one, they got their stuff put together. We anticipate that's the final cycle, then you
Yeah.
fire a public meeting. So I think it's just because the 4th is the maximum, right?
4th is
So-
the one
so
and
you-
final.
Right, so yeah, if you're gonna do the public hearing, you would, and they're just maybe not quite getting it, you're going around those cycles, you would do it for the 4th
What do you think about these two instances though, where they're in their fourth and we're sending them for approval, right? Do you think we should squeak one in? They like the idea of having one.
Yeah, if you wanna do one, then you gotta do one, yeah.
It'll push us past the timelines, but
I think where we're just barely implementing this, like, we're trying to figure it all out.
yeah, I'm okay with
It
it.
From
only
now
pushes
on-
it past the timeline because we can do it at the same time, can't we?
Can't be the same meeting.
Not according to the our law. Lake had a good idea. You guys hadn't come in yet, but when they come in to make application and the staff says it's complete and they send it to the TRC and to us, at that point, just schedule a public hearing on our
Yeah.
next meeting so that
Any neighbors or anybody else can say,
Yeah,
it
we're
doesn't matter.
gonna do that for sure. As
Sure.
long as you can do the best you can with them. Fire.
So what do you guys want? You guys want a public hearing next time and approve it in the same one?
I
Assumptively, you may be, I don't know, they might be, pickle, we have
Unless
to table it or something.
Unless there's earth-shattering evidence not to approve it,
yeah, I would rather have it than not, and then have something bite us down the
And I
road.
think the applicant's not gonna be too upset because you're moving them along. Yeah, you're doing a public hearing, but you're also anticipating you're gonna vote on that at the same
We're trying our best.
Okay. We'll set a public hearing for that same one and assume that we're voting. You might have to realize if there's something that gets brought up, you might be, because I don't want to, hurt the applicant and say, hey, we had this public hearing, but we did it late and now we're going to deny you.
Well,
Now
we
we're
could
gonna
do
deny
conditions.
you.
Put
That's the
conditions.
theory.
Set the condition or table it or something, so. Okay.
All right, so for the next meeting, review the checklist,
Yep.
and then if we could get
If Malcolm gets his deal done
under
with
the
the AUDs and
and
the
oversized structures.
accessory, yeah.
Well, and we want the land use separation being changed. We want to recommend an ordinance change to the city council so we can
Yes.
approve those now. And then I had another suggestion. Our ordinance right now is really unclear on what classifies as a major road. Like if you look at our, Sheldon had pointed out to me the distance between the intersections, like in the Ross Ranch. It was approved prior, but according to our ordinance, if it feeds out to a major road, you have to have at least 800 feet between those intersections. But it doesn't say what a major road is. Is it arterial? Is it a collector road? I think we need to know what that definition is. so that
Anything
we
with,
know.
anything with paint on it would be otherwise there.
But I thought maybe we could put
So I'll
that on
stay
the agenda
though.
too to ask city council for clarification
We
on
don't-
what that is.
We don't waste.
Is that set by the state, or is that something the city decides what their,
Our ordinance just says major road, but it doesn't say anything more
I think
precise
that was
on it.
another one of those, we copied it from Weaver County 25 years ago, never.
yeah, we could, I'd say we could put that on there and look at it.
And then are we gonna look at allowed uses and fines and fees again, or, because we haven't done that yet?
Yes, we can put that. I guess we can just send out there, and I guess since we have those other subdivisions, we can pick 2 or 3 of those to knock down, the most important ones, so we keep our meetings concise.
Yes.
Well, we could do some of it maybe in the work committee, but I know that allowed
We
uses,
could at
that's
least,
been going on for a long
yeah, we
time.
could at least discuss it, so when it does open up, we can just already have a vote on it.
Okay.
Not vote on it. Are you good with it?
Come
I'd like to welcome you all out to our Planning Commission meeting on May 8th, 2025. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll have a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Prince and then a prayer by Commissioner McCormick.
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic in progress stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to gather together and discuss the needs of the cities and the needs of the residents. We ask that the Spirit may be with us, that we may be guided by truth, and we're grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy and that we can make our own decisions and live here and enjoy those comforts that we enjoy. We're grateful for the blessings that Thou hast given us, and we ask Thee that Thou wilt provide us the moisture that we need throughout the year. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I'd like to thank Commissioner Prince for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. On to the consent items. We have the minutes, last meeting's minutes, dated April 10th, 2025. The only correction that I saw on there is that on the vote for the approving of the December 12th minutes, I did not vote on that because I wasn't part of the Planning Commission, so if we could get that correction. And if anybody else saw anything else in those minutes that need to be corrected. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes dated April 10th, 2025.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from April 10th, 2025 with the exception that we remove Jace from voting on the December minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Severing and a second from Commissioner Prince to approve the minutes dated April 10th. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now on to our action items. We have the first item on the agenda is final approval for the Flynn subdivision located at approximately 4931 South, 6700 West for Weston Flynn. I'll turn some time over to staff to present that.
All right. That's an old one right there. Let's get out of this presentation. Give me a second. Let me pull up the right presentation. All right, I think we had a pretty good discussion about the Flynn subdivision in our work meeting, but just to rehash a little bit for the intent of this meeting. This subdivision had come in prior to me ever being here. It was a 2-lot proposal. They revised it, ended up being just a 1-lot subdivision. Weston's been real great to work with. We got everything put in. We've done 4 reviews. He's been super helpful getting us the updated ones along with a printed plan, engineering. Jared's reviewed it as well, Public Works. You can see, let's see here. Yeah, there's the location of it just there on 6700 West. It's kind of our last sewer line out there, but right in front. You can see where he's carving it out.
Malcolm?
This with you.
Okay. Like, we see flamingos.
Yeah, you can see, yeah, you like this. You can see where he's carving out his parcel there. It complies with ordinance in terms of size. It's a 1-acre lot. It meets our frontage requirement. He also submitted a utility plan. It's in your packet. We don't want to guide through that, but he's got all the utility jams. We've received, let's see here. We put out a brief memo from our TRC. As you can see, our TRC is still kind of hammering things down, and it involves you guys, but the TRC at this point did review it. We're recommending, you can see we did our completed reviews. It meets the zoning requirements, meets city development ordinances, meaning his All of his improvement plans are there. Final approval letters were received from all the utility providers, so all the different entities have sent us finals, not will serve. We went and got finals. He's turned in everything needed. The TRC did review it early on. In the first, review, that they recommended that the improvements be deferred to the ordinance prescribed in our escrow process, So you can reference that ordinance in the memo, but we're recommending that the frontages be deferred. And then overall, we're just recommending, right before that, they did, they're here, the applicant, they brought in a waiver for the land use separation fence signed by the adjacent owners of property. And they mentioned they also had submitted that with their prior application before I was here, so I think we've had one in place. You guys had discussion about the ordinance, we'll review that, but for the sake of tonight, we have one in hand you guys can take a look at, but we're good with that. So the TRC at this point recommends to approve the Flynn subdivision. So you can take any questions, or if you wanted to have the applicant or anything. So.
Can I just ask Brandon a question on this? We discussed it in our work meeting, but the way our ordinance currently reads, the Hooper or the City Council has to approve those land use separation fences, and now that our process has changed, this won't go to the council. Malcolm referenced an ordinance that says something like, if anything in this new chapter 8 conflicts with what's in the current ordinances, it will supersede that. Could we do this under that, guys, and then we'll update the ordinance? Or
Yeah, I believe so. Because otherwise you're going to have a problem. Because we don't have a process anymore where it even goes to them to do that.
okay, awesome.
Thank you, Malcolm. Is there a representative from the applicant that would like to come forward? And state your name, don't need to state your address.
Yeah, my name's Weston Flynn. I'm the one doing the Flynn subdivision. So.
Any questions from the planning commission members for Mr. Flynn?
You really want to live that close to your father-in-law?
Well, it's actually her sister, my wife's sister, next door. So they bought Grandma's house. So, yeah.
I have to throw that in thing, sorry.
It's all right. So I have one question. That letter, that memo, I never got a copy of that. Was I supposed to receive that?
You got one from JEB.
Yeah, I guess that works.
The final, I'll send you that one.
Okay. Yeah, just for my records and stuff.
Yeah, of course, happily.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can send you that memo there.
Yeah. Good. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Based off of the information we were given from the staff, that's really all we have to go off of, but it looks like it's okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the final approval of the Flynn subdivision located at 4931 South, 6700 West.
I'll make a motion that we give final approval for the Flynn subdivision located approximately at 4931 South, 6700 West.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Prince for final approval of the Flynn subdivision located at 4931 South, 6700 West. We have a second from Commissioner Woodison. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have discussion and motion on the final approval of the Rawson Ranch Phase 2 subdivision located at approximately coordinates or parcel 15-527-007. Turn some time over to staff for presentation.
Great. You can see the location of Phase 2. This one's been planned for quite a while. It actually received preliminary approval. They elected to take this new process rather than go through the final, through both. So we had a preliminary approval, so we had a pretty good starting point. You can see it indicated there. Looks like 28 lots there. It's right off the road, goes right between our FR and our MR. So this is kind of fourth phase, it's their second phase of the Rawson Ranch, but they have their two others, so this is kind of the final for Rawson Ranch. The staff, the TRC's completed their reviews. It meets the zoning requirements. requirements. They had a rezone, so it has half acres and has the prior frontage there, and then meets city development ordinances. We, through the review cycles, we had quite a few back and forths. We had to put some rear drainage in and met all that to make sure that we abated any issues that we perceived from maybe other ones. The final approval letters are all in. It was an interesting one, but they were great to work with. They got us everything we needed to be at finals, and ultimately, the TRC, after having all 4 reviews, recommends to approve the Rawson Ranch Phase 2 subdivision as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a representative from the applicant that would like to come forward and state your name?
Hi, Garth Hubbard. We don't have to do the address now.
Just the resident.
Only a side note, as far as public hearings. We've been at this a long time, folks. May 4th, 2017, had a city council public hearing to modify the land use map. August 10th, 2017, had the planning commission public hearing to rezone. October 12th, 2017, a public hearing for the approval of the 61 of the whole subdivision. January 9th, 2020, a public hearing from planning commission for RMR. April 9th, public hearing planning commission for RFR. And then May 7th, 2020, in city council, public hearing for RFR. So anyway, we've had a bunch of public hearings on this.
Gar?
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to point out that just in case there was any confusion, the subdivision that we were talking about that still needs a public hearing, because we talked about 2, it wasn't the ones tonight, it's something in the future, so we know you have a lot. I just want to make sure you weren't nervous that we were saying you hadn't had one, so.
Gotcha, thank you. Oh, any questions? Sorry.
Any other members have any question for Mr. Hubbard?
All right.
Thank you. Bring it back to the commission for discussion and motion.
I know there had been some issues with one of the neighbors that were adjacent to the property, and we discussed in work meeting that those had been taken care of. That was really my only concern, and so I think staff has signed off on that from what I understand, so I think it's good.
I'll entertain a motion for final approval of the Rawson Ranch Phase 2 subdivision.
I'll make a motion that we approve or have final approval for the Rawson Ranch Phase 2 located at approximately parcel 15-527-0007 for Cammy and Garth Hubbard.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sebring. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Greeno. All in favor to approve the Rawson Ranch Phase 2 subdivision located at parcel 15-527-007 for Cammy and Garth Hubbard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, at this time, we'll open up the meeting to citizen comment. You'll be allowed 3 minutes to express your concern about anything that was not on the agenda. As you come to the microphone, please state your name, or if you're a resident, you don't need to state your address, and we'll open it up at this time for those comments.
I'm actually not sure if this is city council or planning commission. I just wanted to put the bikes on the bike trail. I want to do that as a speed limit because everything goes on it, whether it's e-bikes, which I have, or whatever. But I think the only correct way to deal with it is not what do you call them? Deleting. Yeah. Just to put a speed limit on it for whatever it is. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Chair, Council. Hope you guys are well. So I'm probably here a little bit prematurely. Oh, Casey Tucker, man. I'm a resident. I have some property off of 4000 South and 5350. I talked to the planning, there's city planner, right? So I talked to him a little bit about splitting my parcel. I'm currently zoned R1. I started looking at the future use land map, and I've seen that I'm currently R1. I'm on an acre, and then I see the future land map says that it's R.75. What my plan was, I've lived out here for about, my grandparents have been out here for about 50 years, and I've been out here for about 40 since I was a little kid. Now I bought my grandparents' house some time ago. What my plan is, I want to submit an application, and I was wondering maybe I get some feedback from you guys. Not sure if that's how this works, but I wanted to split my parcel and make it an R2, and have the one home on half an acre, and then build a house on the other half of an acre. I have a vacant field there. There is sewer that's available there. There's water that's available there. My idea is that I think it'll be an improvement to the city instead of it just being an empty field where it kind of gathers stuff. I can clean that field up, put a nicer home there, put a nice fence there, all that stuff, and then clean up the older property and then probably sell it. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I was a little confused though because I said like the future use land map across the street from me was zoned as half acres. And then when I look at the future map, they're all zoned for 1 acre. I'm currently on an acre, but then my future land map says 3/4 acres. So that was a little bit confusing to me. So just wanted to put that out to you guys. Also, I looked on your website. The last city ordinance information that I could see was from 2022. I don't know if there's any new stuff out there. So yeah, that's about all I have to say. I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to give you a little bit of clarification on that, so your current zoning could be R1, where the future land use map shows 0.75, you have the potential to rezone to that.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to go smaller than that, then you would have to make a request to open the general plan. And the one option you may want to look into is the possibility of maybe an accessory dwelling unit. You wouldn't be subdividing into 2 separate parcels, but it would give you another dwelling that you could potentially rent out for. You would have to own or occupy at least one of the dwellings, either the primary resident or the accessory dwelling unit. But that may be something you may want to look into.
Okay.
You're limited to 960 square feet on that second dwelling,
Okay.
but it might be a workaround for what you're wanting to do. So
Yeah, I wanted to build a bigger home, to be honest with you. That's what I was trying to do. I have the means now to build bigger. My kids go out to school out here. We like it out here. My family's buried out here. I've never really planned on leaving until as of late. The homes are, more expensive now. So it's kind of the option of, do I split my parcel, build a nicer home, and do something that way, or do I leave Hooper? I like this place. So if I have to leave, I do, but I just don't want to. That makes sense. So if I have to come and try to open up the future plan map, I might do something like that. We'll see. I don't want to give you guys too much of a hassle.
yeah, you'd probably want to talk to Malcolm, and he can go over some of those things, like what would be involved, because it's not super easy to accomplish that. So just giving you a heads up.
All right, thank you.
One other thing too, just so you're aware, one of the big limitations you might run into is even on half-acre lots, you need to have 130 feet of frontage.
Yes, sir.
So you need to have basically 260 feet of frontage.
On either side.
Well, total between the house existing and a new one. So just something to check into as well to see if you have that frontage.
I have the frontage for sure. They're on both sides, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more citizen comment? I'll close the citizen comment and entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Oh,
We have a motion from Commissioner Greener and a second from Commissioner Prince to adjourn the May 8th, 2025 Planning Commission agenda, or Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.